What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we got Kristian of Manticora. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you all for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. The newest album is to Live, to Kill, to Live. Do you just want to talk about like how the making of this record was, like what the thought process was when making it?
Yeah, actually, it all started when Lars handed me a huge pile of papers and said, "Hey, I'm writing a book," and I was like, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, could you please read it and see if it's any good?" And then I sat down and read his notes, and at that time it was only partial done, so I read his notes and went back to him and said, "Well, that's pretty messed up," but in a weird way, and we started talking about would it be cool to make music for a story that you created, so that everything is ours. I mean, a 300 pages novel and an album, and well, we agreed upon we should do it. And to make a very, very long story short, it all ended with a huge whiteboard and a song for each chapter. Some of them wasn't created yet, some of them were only halfway done. But when we looked at the whiteboard, we said, this is not going to be on one album. And then we agreed upon making two albums. So that's pretty much how this all started.
Wow, since literature and writing a book was very influential in the making of this album. Obviously, it determines the lyrics, but did it also determine on how the music was composed as well?
Definitely, especially when I create music, I always get into a zone. I need to figure out, is this a hard-hitting song? Is this a more slow song? Is it theatrical? Where are we going? So it definitely made an impact that to make the songs after a book, because sometimes in the book you're really in the darkness, and it just gives you something as a music writer that you are in the complete darkness and in complete horror or complete sadness, and it's what triggers my creativity. So it had a huge impact on the musical writing.
Yeah, like I feel like when you get lost in a book, it is almost like getting lost in an album in a way. I feel like people kind of approach an album and a book in a very similar way.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, like so being that literature and each song represents a chapter. This is not an album that like a listener can approach from every single angle, right? You recommend that a listener starts off with the first track Katana and ends with Katana beheaded, or can a listener approach this album in any way they want?
Well, they can approach the album any way they want, but if they want the third dimension, which is what we are trying to aim at, then you should read the book and then follow the lyrics as the songs go by, because it really creates this thick atmosphere, and it just makes the whole artwork complete. So if you want the 100%, then you should read the book and take it from the top, meaning the first album, To Kill, To Live, To Kill, and then follow it up by the new one, To Live, To Kill, To Live. So that would be the best way to do it. But I think all tracks on the new album is good on their own, so you can approach it any way you want.
So let me ask you this, because we've seen a lot of movies that were based off of books, and they're always, most of the time, they're usually like watered down, or they have to crop stuff out. That's not the case with this album, though, in relation to the book, right?
No, not really. There are a few passages passages that have been left out, but all chapters are pretty much covered on the two albums.
Now, obviously, this album. Do you feel like maybe this album could be open to interpretation for some listeners, or is maybe like the goal of the album for Manticora is to get the listener engaged in the story of To Live, To Kill, To Live?
I think it's definitely meant to engage the audience into this specific story. You could interpret it, but I can't really see how, because it's really a vivid it's a vivid story, and it's very hard hitting and very horrific. But of course, you can always analyze it in some way, but I think that the best way is to approach it as the story is, really.
Being that this has like its own little presentation and almost kind of like its own era in the Manticora catalog, can it have any relationship to some of your previous albums, such as Eight Deadly Sins or Roots of Eternity or Safe, or any of those?
No, not really. This is a complete other chapter. There are no relations to the other albums at all. No.
Have you ever approached your previous albums in a conceptual angle like you did with this one?
We have two albums, the Black Circus albums, where we actually created all the songs at one time. You know, before we entered the studios, all the songs were already made. So we tried it out on the Black Circus albums. The big difference is that on the Black Circus albums, that's the typical rehearsal room albums. We met up 3 times a week, looked at each other and said, I have this idea, and then we tried it out, and 90% of the times we went home with nothing. So that's pretty much how the Black Circus albums were made. These 2 new albums were made completely on a computer from the beginning, because we spoke about trying to approach creativity and music in a brand new way, and I came up with the idea that we should, instead of meeting 3 times a week after work and being tired, we met in a whole weekend instead. So we started Friday, and agreed upon a tempo and the track, of course. This one is called Eaten by the Beast, and at that time there was nothing, and we agreed upon a tempo, and then we split up for an hour, and started creating riffs in our heads and recording them on our telephones and so on, and then we met again 1 hour and started recording everything and putting drums on it and arranging everything so that all ideas were recorded and finished, and then we tried to put them together. Anyway, the plan was that every weekend we met up, we should at least have the skeleton of 1 number, maybe 2. And this process really it was a huge, what do you call it? We did a lot of songs in a very shorter time than we normally would have done. So it was very productive doing it that way.
I'd imagine it was also very organic too, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'd imagine, because it seems like you guys are like really concrete. You have a strategy, you have a methodology behind your music and your creativity. Is there ever stuff that comes like subconsciously though?
I mean, we don't have a keyboard player, for instance, and we actually do a lot of keyboards in our music, and I do a lot of keyboards in the music, but they're all programmed. But some or most of the keyboard parts are just happening. I mean, there are tones, a weird instrument, and things just happens. We have a song called Tunan Jing on the new album. And this song was really just created because I found a weird instrument and it sounded really funny. And all of a sudden I thought to myself, wow, this could be something Japanese or Korean. So, and that started that track.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny because being that you have such a concept and these ideas, is there ever like any vestige of your personal lives though incorporated in this album as well? Has there ever been personal experience that could influence the art of Manticora?
Well, not on these two albums, but on the album Faith is really a story, a life story. And it could happen to me and you, and but it's really basically it's the story of Lars and mine. So that is definitely a very personal story. The two new albums are purely fiction. And that's a good thing.
Yeah. So do you almost feel like in this album and when you take this material live, do you almost feel like you're in a way kind of like, because I remember seeing you guys, as I mentioned before we started rolling, I saw you guys on the Persephone tour and seeing Lars, come up in the biohazard suit and everything like that. Like, do you almost feel like you guys portray characters in a way?
Yeah, we try to be dramatically and theatrical, and we really try to put that extra spice on our performance. And we spoke a lot about this biohazard suit. And in the beginning, we were all like, nah, it's weird. And but then again, if you sit down and read the book, then the person coming on stage in that suit makes so much sense. So it was pretty easy for us to put him on stage at that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd imagine like when you guys are rehearsing and practicing, you're not just rehearsing the material. There's almost kind of like a choreography that you have to rehearse as well, right?
Exactly. Everything is thought of in some way. Some things happen by incidents or accidents, but most of it is definitely thought of.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's funny is because sometimes and even though I kind of just asked it already and you just answered it, but I'd imagine that this is a story that you resonate. So even though you don't really sing about personal experiences on this new album, because it's coming from you and it's coming from Lars and it's coming from everybody else, that it has to almost resonate with you in a certain way in order for you to write about it, right?
Yeah, it does. But yeah, it's difficult because as an artist, you always have your personality somewhere hidden in the stories and in the music. So you can never just say that this has nothing to do with me and this is pure fiction. But you can always find the person in the music and in the lyrics as well. But on the latest two albums, this is just you have to understand the reason behind this horror story to understand it.
Yeah. Do you feel that if a listener who may just be stumbling upon you guys now and may have not have heard of Manticora until this new offering is coming, do you almost feel like in order for a listener to get the best understanding of To Live, to Kill, to Live, they should read the book first? Or is that almost kind of just optional?
I would say that it is optional because I think that the music on the new album and the previous one as well stands out really good, and all the songs are easy to listen to. But if you want that extra dimension to it, if you want every lyrics and every vocal line to stand out and have that feeling where you get the goosebumps, then you should read the book. It's like, the 3D glasses in the cinema. This extra dimension that gives it to the movie theaters. That's what we try to do by writing a book and make that extra dimension to the final artwork.
That's a very good analogy. I do got to say, though, when you go to a movie theater, like when you wear the 3D glasses at a movie theater and then you take them off, you feel like you're just wasted afterwards.
Exactly.
Yeah, like I'm not even kidding. I remember carrying like a bunch of drinks for friends at an IMAX theater one time, and it looked like that there was 10 cups of soda just hovering in the air, and I was just hugging the air, not carrying anything. And the final question I wanted to ask you is currently being a band that resides in Denmark, I've interviewed quite a lot of up-and-coming bands from Denmark. Like back in the beginning of this year, I interviewed the band Cabal, different type of style, but maybe you've heard of them. And it seems like there's a great like scene in Denmark, despite it being a very small country. Would you say that there is like a metal scene in Denmark, or is the goal for Manticora to kind of like go outside the boundaries?
No, we definitely have a metal scene in Denmark, and it's been stronger every year. And I think that something happened in Denmark, maybe 10 years ago or something, that the musicians became grown-ups. They started to take themselves seriously and say, we can do this. In the early days, it was like, let's make a band. Yeah, good idea, high five, and millions of years later, nothing really happened. Because, being a small country, it's very difficult for us in Denmark to aim for the stars, because we're a very small country. Why should we ever win the lottery, so to speak? But I think that I'm just saying 10 years now. I can't really say the precise amount of years, but something happened 10 or maybe 12 years that the musicians got better, and they took being a rock or metal artist serious for the first time. And it was okay to be a Danish metal band. It doesn't have to be Metallica or Iron Maiden, but just being proud of what you're doing and just make a good brand in a good quality, and you can make it actually.
Definitely.
And I think that's a new thing in Denmark. Well, 10 or 12 years. We also have a huge festival now, only with heavy metal. And I think it's like 10 or 12 years old now. So we have a strong metal scene in Denmark, definitely.
Awesome. Got to make a trip out there soon.
Yeah, you should witness the Copenhagen Metal Festival. It's really great.
I love that. That is the best name of any festival I've ever heard in my life. I'm definitely going to try to make it out there. Hopefully they need press.
We met a few Americans actually last time we went there, and they said this is the greatest metal festival they've ever been to. And they were like 4 guys traveling around Europe, visiting all the metal festivals, and they said this is so cozy because there are not a million people, and it's like we're maybe 100. There are only like 30,000 people on this festival, so it's a small thing.
Still a lot. I mean, granted, I was at a festival last year and there was like over 1 million. I think there had to have been like 500,000 people there or something like that. So
yeah.
I know the feeling. But they say metal is dead when the festivals can pack up 500,000 people.
Exactly.
Yep.
It's not dead.
Yeah, of course. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Just, obviously thanks to a certain virus that shall not be named, I'm not mentioning it on my site. But obviously when all this is over, we'll be seeing you guys on the road quite a bit. Is there a chance you'll be returning to the U.S.? Because a lot of people have been wanting to see you guys again after the Persephone tour.
Definitely. Whenever we get the chance to come to the States again, we will do that. That's for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kristian. Everybody, we are here with Kristian of Manticora. To live, to kill, to live. Be sure to pick that up. This is Alex from Heavy New York. We will see you next time.